In this lecture, we're going to be talking about our demonstrative speeches, which is the next speech that we'll give in this class. And so there are a couple of different types of speeches that we learn about in class, and the first type is called an impromptu or extemporaneous speech. And that's the first speech that we gave. It's a speech that basically you don't plan or prepare for. It's probably about a subject matter that you already know a little bit about or something about. And it's still going to be something you give in front of people. It's going to have a topic, and it's going to be given to an audience, obviously, but it's not really prepared or organized with outlines or pre-written out. Next, we have our demonstrative speech, which is a type of informative speech, which we're going to start learning about today. Next, we have our informative speech, which is with the object to inform. You usually do research for this speech, and you have sources throughout the speech. Next, we have a persuasive speech, and that is going to be where you obviously persuade. We use rhetoric to get our audience, ethos, pathos, logos. You know, we've heard about those things in some of our English papers, and we'll obviously go into depth about it. But basically, in these speeches, they're going to try to persuade you of something. You're going to pick an argument or a side of something, and you're going to try and persuade your audience by the end of it. Versus with informative speech, we're just looking to inform them of something, let them know all sides or a certain side, but with no opinion. Next, we have a special occasion speech as well. That's going to be something like a best man speech. That's going to be something like maybe a eulogy, something like a valedictorian acceptance speech, anything like that. So as some of you may have seen, all of our speeches, they're going to get longer and longer. So all of our speeches are going to be time limited, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. And that's kind of scary when you look at our last speech. If you read our syllabus, that's kind of scary. Say, oh, I have a 10-minute speech. First of all, 10 minutes is 10 minutes maximum, right? You don't have to speak for 10 minutes. You have to speak for a minimum of 6 minutes. That's our longest speech. But when you think about it, if you go back and look in our syllabus, our speeches build on each other, right? So our first speech was 2 minutes. Not horrible, right? And it was a little bit harder than our other speeches will be because you didn't really have to plan for it. So there was a lot of what do I say next, right? So for these next speeches, that's not going to be like that. You're going to have prepared information for the speeches. And so this speech is going to be 3 to 4 minutes, right? The next speech is going to be 5 to 10 minutes. And then after that, it's going to be 6 to 10 minutes. In the special occasion speech, basically that's the pinnacle of the class. And so we're using all the things that we learned in order to engage our audience. We're going to capture their attention and engage them for a special occasion speech. A special occasion speech, the goal of the speech is not to inform, it's not to teach our audience something, it's not to persuade them of anything, it's to entertain. And so that's something just like, a motivational speech or a valedictorian speech. You want to engage your audience, basically. And so that's the pinnacle of the class. So we want to build up all of these skills with the goal at the end of the class that we can capture an audience's attention. And so back to our demonstrative speech that we'll be doing next. In a nutshell, a good demonstrative speech, it teaches, basically. With the goal at the end of the speech, your audience will basically have learned something. And that's basically ideally a skill or maybe a process. The audience would have been listening, watching, or even participating to accomplish your goal of getting them to learn whatever it may have been you were trying to teach, right? So what is a demonstrative speech? And obviously, like I said earlier, it's a type of informative speech, except with the difference of with an informative speech, we research something to teach someone of a topic. And that could be anything. Maybe that could be stem cell research. Maybe I'm really interested in stem cell research. Maybe I'm really interested in electric vehicles and the benefits for the environment. Maybe I just want to look up how Abraham Lincoln's presidency was overall, right? So you're learning something, you're researching something, you're informing of something. Whereas with a demonstrative speech, you want your audience to learn something, right? Versus with the informative speech, you want them to be persuaded of something, right? You want to sway their opinion. I'm sorry, with the persuasive speech, I mean. And versus, informative speech and you want to teach them something. A demonstrative speech, you want to teach them something by demonstrating it yourself, right? And we'll get to that later, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a demonstration. A demonstrative speech is twofold. You want to inform you of a topic, yes, but not like research or statistics. It informs you of how to do something. So That can basically be a process, or it can be basically DIY, anything that you can YouTube. Think about it like that. Anything that you can YouTube, you can basically consider a demonstrative speech. And it's exactly as it sounds. You demonstrate. Though this is a demonstrative speech, despite the name, you don't have to physically demonstrate it, right? You can also do something along the lines of a step-by-step or a process of something, right? You walk us through anything that you can walk us through the step-by-step process. So if I wanted to teach you all how to make jelly from strawberries, if I wanted to show you how to make strawberry preserves, that's a process that I can walk you through step by step. That's something, again, like I said, something that you can YouTube, how to make strawberry jam, right? Anything that's DIY oriented, so maybe something like ripped jeans, how to make my own ripped jeans. That's going to be the same thing. That is a demonstrative speech. So yeah, DIYs, anything along that line. So our formal definition of a demonstrative speech is a speech, it tends to teach audience how something works or how to do something. Simple enough, right? So there's a couple different types of demonstrative speeches, right? We have how something works, we have how something's done, how something is made or produced, and then how something happens. So to give a couple examples of those, we have how something works. That's how an eye works. That's the inner workings of an eye, something we maybe can't necessarily see, and so the process needs to be broken down that's in a way that's a little simpler. That could be the mechanics of things, so maybe how a carburetor works, or how the inner workings of a computer is, the actual hardware. So those are all things we kind of can't see, so it needs to be explained step by step to us, how these processes work. How something's done also is another type. And so we have how to clean a fish, how to pitch a curveball. How something is done is a great idea for speeches that you may or may not want to demonstrate physically. Okay, so if we were in class and you wanted to even have a volunteer up there showing you how to pitch a curveball, and that is definitely an option for you all as well. So as I was saying, for our demonstrative speeches, you don't have to necessarily physically demonstrate the speeches, and we'll get into that. But if you're explaining something like how the eye works, that's a demonstrative speech, but I can't necessarily demonstrate it to you, right? Okay, so it's a step-by-step process, so you don't have to actually, physically show us. But if you wanted to do a speech to where you can physically show us, something like how to clean a fish is fine. And that's a topic that you can do that isn't open to all of my students. So our students in class, they obviously can't bring a knife to school with fish, and so that's a topic that you, because this class is online, are actually able to do. Again, how to perform a surgery, maybe open heart surgery, something like that. That's a little harder for you guys. You'd probably need some type of digital software. You'd probably need to be a surgeon to know how to do those things. So it's not what we're looking for. A next type of speech is how something's made or produced. So how to make coffee. Think about those shows, those documentary shows, and it tells you how maybe how Laffy Taffy is made, and it takes you through the whole refinery or the whole factory and the process and the machine. So that's how a violin's made, something like that, or the art of origami, how to make origami, or maybe how to make tamales. Another one is how something happens. That's the last type of speech, demonstrative speech. And so maybe how dinosaurs became extinct. How did that occur? How dreams occur? How do diseases develop? Maybe think of the cycle of maybe like the bird flu or something like that. How did that come to be? So now that we know the types of demonstrative speeches, how do you pick a topic, right? Picking a demonstrative speech topic, there's a couple of things that you should consider, right? So your requirements. You only have a 3 to 4 minute speech, right? What can I do in 3 to 4 minutes? So, for example, I had one guy in one of my classes, he gave a speech on how to build a tent, right? He said he was an avid hiker and he spent a lot of times outdoors, and this is something he was very familiar with, right? But you only have 3 to 4 minutes. And so in class, you have to take a couple of things into consideration if you're going to physically demonstrate something, right? Can you physically get a tent up in 3 to 4 minutes? He had a small tent, to make it a little easier on him, but even still, you have to, if you're physically demonstrating something, you have to speak through it the whole time, right? You have to be able to talk to your audience. While you're demonstrating, you have to be able to talk through your demonstration. So maybe I'm showing you all how to make cane sauce, right? I can't just put all the ingredients together, mix it up, and have this really awkward silence. That's not a speech, right? And so if I'm teaching you all how to do something, I have to be able to walk you through step by step. Again, think about a YouTube video. If you have any questions, Google something. How to make a cane sauce, how to DIY rip my jeans, things like that. And watch how people do that. Things to consider. How much space do you have? That's not as much of a problem for you all when we're in class. How much space do you have feasibly? Are you able to demonstrate something? But you guys can go outside, you can be in your room, whatever it may be. You have to also consider your resources. So maybe you want to teach us how a carburetor works in a car engine. Can you take out the carburetor out of a car? Do you have one to take out? Do you have an extra one lying around? And can you feasibly take it to class? Sure, you can take a carburetor, but if you wanted to tell us how to rebuild an engine, which I'm sure you couldn't do in 3 to 4 minutes, but say that's what you wanted to do, would you be able to do that? Take the engine out and bring it to class? No, you can't do that. So you have to consider your resources. Also consider interest. You don't want to have something that's uninteresting, basically. So I've had multiple students talk to us about how to put together a computer, basically. So one guy even brought in a computer so he can point to the different parts and things like that. And so is that a demonstrative speech topic? Sure. But interest, it's very boring. And so not that it can't be boring. I actually just had a student do how to put in a graphics card on a computer, and he used a PowerPoint, and he compared the computer to like the guts of a human, and he was using examples, different things like that, and that actually was a very interesting speech. But for the most part, if people aren't familiar with your topic, it can very easily get really monotonous and boring, and people start to zone out. So you want to pick a topic not only that interests you, but also interests your audience. But your interest should definitely be taken into consideration as well. So I don't want you to go out and research anything for this speech, right? I don't want you to go and Google speech topics and pick something random that you don't know and go learn how to do it. I'm looking for something that you're already technically an expert on, or maybe something you already do, a hobby, something maybe if you've been fishing all your life with your dad, or your grandma taught you how to sew clothes, something that you already know how to do, right? And the reason that we want to do that is because our next speeches, they're not going to be things that we're familiar with, right? They're not going to be topics that we already know about. They're going to be things we have to research. I mean, you might already know some things, but as far as having the whole speech, you're going to have to look up some of the information. And so the point here is to show you all that when you're giving a speech, you don't want to memorize the speech, right? That's the worst thing we can do, is write a speech as an essay, right? Write it down and read it to us, or even try to memorize all of the words on the speech, right? Or even try to memorize all the words on the speech, right? That's not in our best interest. That's actually where people start to mess up, because if you try to memorize a whole speech, you forget a part, and that's where you start to switch up. So what we want to do is talk about something that you're already familiar with. So for example, with your first speech, your introduction speech, I asked you all to talk about yourself, and you guys could do that relatively easy. And there were pauses, and it wasn't as easy as you would think, just because it was coming off the top of your head, right? But this speech you're going to be prepared for. So if I asked you to go redo that introduction speech for 2 minutes, but I want you to prepare for it, you guys will be able to talk about yourself for 2 minutes, no problem, right? Talk about your likes, your dislikes, your studies, friends, siblings, hobbies, music taste, all of those things. You'd be able to do that off the top of your head, right? Versus a material that you're not familiar with. You'd have to try and memorize that. You don't want to do that. And so the point is, the more familiar you are with your topic, right? The more familiar you are with your topic, the easier it is to speak on it. If I asked you to talk about your mom, give me a speech about your mom or your kid. If you asked me to give me a 10-minute speech about my son, I could go on for days, right? Or even things like communication. So as you see, I have a PowerPoint right here, but my PowerPoint doesn't have all the things that I'm saying to you on it, right? And so I've given this same lecture a bunch of times, right? Demonstrative speeches. but it's never the same lecture. Why? Because it's coming from here. It's not coming from, I've typed this out and I have notes on this. No, I have my guide right here, which is, and you all's guide will be your outline, but you guys aren't supposed to read from it. You're not supposed to, it's the bones of your speech. It's really literally an outline, something to guide you, bullet points, strict bullet points, no paragraphs, nothing like that, right? And so that's what we're looking for from you all. We're looking for the point that this is going to be easiest if you know what you're talking about. Another topic is the complexity or simplicity of your art. Complexity or the simplicity of your topic. And so something like maybe how to tie a tie. It's really simple. Can you even hit your time requirements for a topic like that? How to make a coffee. Maybe something like how to make a specialty coffee, but just how to make coffee. A topic that's too simple or too basic isn't going to be able to hit your requirements or keep the interest of your audience. Maybe something like, next you'd want to look at the scope of your topic, right? You want something that's not too broad, but also not too narrow. So saying something like how to make specialty coffee, really broad. Saying something about how to only make iced coffee is a little narrow. A topic like how to make flavored iced coffee, maybe. And that gives you a little leeway to kind of open up the topic a little more or close it up as well. It also gives you a little, what I like to call a lagniappe in there in your speech. And you want to have a little lagniappe in your speech, right? You want to be able to, if you talk too fast, you want to be able to go ahead and look back at the timer and say, oh, I was talking a little too fast. I need to bring in my lagniappe, which is just extra information that you can add to your speech to make it a little bit more longer without basically saying drawing it out, right? So this stuff that is relevant to the topic. It's not nonsense that you're talking, but it also doesn't have to be included if you run out of time or if you spend time talking about other topics. And so maybe I'm teaching you for this speech how to make vanilla and caramel iced coffee. But I decide I have a little extra time. Let's make a mocha iced coffee, or let's make a cinnamon iced coffee, or let's teach them how to line the cup with caramel, different things like that. So like I said, you don't want it to be too broad. So how to make specialty coffee. Wow, there's a million types of coffee. You got iced coffee, you got espresso, you got cappuccinos, you got frappuccinos, all of those, cappuccinos, frappuccinos. You have all of that. And so you want to make sure that you're looking at the scope of your topic. And then lastly, we have our rationale. Why are you teaching us this? How is it applicable to me? So let's say if I'm teaching you how to make iced coffee. Why do people care, basically, right? So my introduction might sound a little something like, I'm sure all of you drink coffee every day, but today I'm going to teach you how to spice up your everyday coffee routine. Okay, why is this applicable? Because most people drink coffee, right? They might want to know how to spice it up. Starbucks, PJs, those are huge franchises. So obviously somebody cares about these coffees, right? If I'm teaching you how to clean a fish, I might give you a rationale, something like, um, living in the South, many of us were taught how to hunt and fish by our parents. But some of us weren't taught how to clean the fish. Maybe your parents did it for you, whatever it was, or your grandpa. So that's a topic that's you're giving us a rationale. So does the topic necessarily have to be applicable to everyone? No, but you should give us the rationale in that topic. So I'm teaching you how the eye works or how we see color. Why? That's basic knowledge. Maybe everyone should know that. Why do some people have eye problems? Why do we see this color instead of that color? Um, so you need to find a rationale in there to give us. Lastly, I have a couple list of topics, but I do have more topics and if you go to the demonstrative speech module, we have something called types of demonstrative speeches with examples. And so if you go into that module, I'm going to have the types of speeches that we went over a couple slides ago. And then I'm also going to have examples at the bottom. So say you want to actually physically demonstrate your speech. Remember I said you don't have to physically demonstrate it, but sometimes that's easier for some people. Gives their hand something to do, something to where they're not always focused on what they're saying and trying to remember, blah, 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 blah. So it kind of takes their mind off of the scary part of public speaking, right? So we have topics like how to make a specialty coffee, iced coffee, lattes, cappuccinos, espressos, was a great topic. If you have an espresso maker, go for it. If you have all the stuff to make it, sure, why not? How to roller skate. You can actually physically demonstrate how to roller skate. How to make a smoothie. I've had students actually bring a blender to class and like make smoothies and let everybody sample it. How to do yoga or stretch for beginners. And that's a great one as well. If you have maybe a sibling or a parent or a friend that's willing to come on camera, you can even use them to demonstrate. You can say, you can have them place their hand and you can point out the muscles that they may be stretching, or the yoga position, or, proper form, things like that. And that's gonna actually be your demonstration. Next, we have how to safely lift weights to prevent injury. So that's actually talking about your form, right? So when you're doing a deadlift, are you going to round your back? No, we're going to have straight back. So maybe how to prevent injuries. And how to make cane sauce. I also had someone come to class and actually teach us how to make cane sauce. And so he brought all of the spices and mixed it in class for us. And then we could do something a little funny. So it's not something to demonstrate, maybe how to deal with a bad roommate. And so I chose this topic because I used to be an RA when I was in college. When I was in undergrad, I used to be over the athletic dorms, and we'd have so many problems with athletes and their roommates. And so I used to have to mediate those problems as a RA, which is a resident assistant in the dorms. If you had a bad roommate, what are the steps to follow to deal with this roommate? And so obviously you want to be able to talk to your roommate. Next, what's our next step? We need to come up with a schedule, a compromise, whatever it may be. You need to identify the problem and, step, and then eventually, you get the office involved, different things like that. So anyway, how to deal with a bad roommate. So that could be something funny. It doesn't necessarily have to be serious. It could be funny, or you can make it serious. How to bathe a cat. So that's something that you can really make easy. I don't have cats. I have dogs. I have two big dogs, a Rottweiler and a German Shepherd. As I'm sure you guys can hear sometimes throughout my speech, my lecture, my dogs chiming in and out. But I'm at the house today, and so yeah, I don't have dogs. I have cats, but my dogs do not like to be bathed either. So, well, my German Shepherd doesn't like to be bathed, and so I have to like hold her down by her neck and like put her in a chokehold. Coco, sit down. That's her name, Coco, and that can be a really funny speech. I'll talk about how first things first, put on your bathing suit. So the first step of washing my dog is put on your bathing suit because she's gonna make a huge mess. You got to wash her outside. So it could be something funny. How to get over a breakup. That could also be funny. Or it could be serious, but you could make it funny. How to get over a bad breakup. First things first, get a tub of ice cream, something funny. And then also how to identify a lie, or how to successfully lie. So have a little humor throughout the speech. You can make it funny. And a couple more ideas. Some of them I have mentioned throughout the presentation, but some of them I haven't, and these are just good ideas in general. And like I said, there is a longer list of topics that I've already kind of vetted through that I deem good topics. Not that you have to use these topics at all. Like I said, you want to use a topic that you're already familiar with, something that you can already teach us how to do, right? So these topics, like I said, are just a couple of them, and I do have some more topics. So how to DIY your own ripped jeans, and on the same note, how to acid wash your own jeans, or stain your jeans, or tie dye a shirt, anything like that is gonna be acceptable for our speech. How to locate and purify water in the desert. Sure, go for it. That's people that like to survival guides, even in the forest, maybe not in the desert, but that's just an example. How do bills work in Congress? So that's the example of a process of something, right? We talked about different types of speeches. You're like, oh, how is that demonstrative speech? You can very well have a PowerPoint, just like I'm doing right here, and do picture in your PowerPoint and talk about the flow of a bill. You start in the legislative branch, yada yada yada. How Congress works, or making a bill. How to layer, fade, or cut your own hair. If you cut your own hair, go for it. How to make a fishing net, and then how to track wild animals. I did have a student come in. He did not bring his dog, but he did bring the markers that he uses to train his hunting dog. So he taught us how to train a hunting dog. So that was cool, a cool speech. So yeah, all of these topics are completely up to you. Like I said, if there's something else you like to crochet, come teach us how to crochet. I had a girl teach us how to do that as well. But like I said, you do need to remember the requirements of the speech. So that's a 3 to 4 minute speech, okay? You don't have long, right? So you can't teach us necessarily, like I said, how to put up a whole 10 in 3 to 4 minutes. It's really hard, right? It might be really hard to teach us how to maybe renovate a house. There's a lot of moving parts in a house. So maybe how to renovate your bathroom on a budget, not your house on a budget. So different things like that to keep in mind.